welcome to the latest advisor conversation. And today we have Michael Kitces, and we're going to have a conversation about the client value proposition. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Colin. Great to be here.
Terrific. Before we get going, we'll have links to your website and blogs and so on, but maybe a quick intro about yourself from yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Michael Kitces. I split my time as a partner with a private wealth management firm here in the Baltimore, Washington area in the eastern United States called Pinnacle Advisory Group. Mm-hmm. And then I publish a financial planning industry blog for other practitioners called Nerd's Eye View, where we look at planning trends and opportunities in the U.S. space and a little bit increasingly globally as well.
Yeah, we certainly see the Nerd's Eye View down here in Australia, and we look forward to your weekend reading, which you put out every weekend, which is great, and I find that very interesting. Look, thank you very much for taking part in the conversation, and today we're going to be talking about the advisor-client value proposition. As you are well aware, over here in Australia, we've got something called FOFA coming along, and whilst everyone's concerned about ticking all the right boxes and making sure they're compliant and all that type of stuff before July 1, I think everyone is basically saying that once we've ticked all those boxes off, what's going to be the most important aspect for a financial advisor is the ability to really articulate and to deliver upon their client value proposition. So I thought we'd have a chat about that, and maybe from your side, what's currently happening in the US? What are you seeing as sort of best practice, you might say, over there in terms of the client value proposition?
Well, it's a great question, and it's a similar, it's sort of an interesting parallel here in the U.S. So we have been voluntarily migrating for many years in the direction of these more fee-based businesses. For better or for worse, we've been getting there slowly and voluntarily, not necessarily all at once by sort of regulatory change demanding it there. So we've maybe been evolving the space a little bit longer than Australia, but you're certainly going to get to the end point more quickly than we are. Now, the way we see it evolving here in the U.S., certainly one of the challenges that's arising is as more and more businesses hone in on these similar business models with some similar structure to them, figuring out, well, how do we still remain unique and differentiated in that space? How do we keep defining value propositions? And some of the trends that are becoming clear here in the U.S. as far as what works or what doesn't work. So one of the big things that doesn't work very well is just anchoring yourself entirely to your investments and what you do. We're the best at managing foreign stocks, or we're the best at managing bonds, or we're the best at managing equity shares. Unless you truly want to make that the entire central piece of your business, doing that as a broader advisor kind of gets you stuck in a space where you survive or fail by your investment returns alone, and clients quickly lose perspective of what else do you do that brings value to the table. So we see most advisors trying to go beyond that to focus on the financial planning end of things. I sort of call it the way to defend against being commoditized, because we can do things there that are very valuable and unique to clients. At the same time, I think what we're seeing emerge really here as best practices in the U.S. on that end is we have to get away from this tendency that we have that says, well, since we're very well-trained professionals that know how to handle whatever situations come to us, we can just do everything for everyone, no matter who they are. Granted, often as well-trained financial planners, maybe we are kind of capable of doing that, but you lose your unique value proposition, you lose your differentiator. So the people that we see that are surviving and thriving the best in that space don't just run these practices around fees, but they do it with a very specific target clientele. They do it with a niche in mind, a particular group that they're going to work with, and a particular value that they deliver in that space. And that's ultimately what lets them build the unique differentiation that lets them succeed and survive and really thrive.
So you're seeing a trend there, developing that niche and becoming known as I guess you might say, the expert financial advisor in that particular niche.
Exactly. One of the examples that we look at, and we've seen this huge range of, I knew an advisor that specifically works with eye doctors. That's his niche. He works with eye doctors. He can tell you as much about how to run a medical practice or the latest laser machines we're doing for eye surgery as he can about financial planning things. But then when he's having conversations or prospective clients are talking about him, the first person says, oh, you should work with my advisor, he's great. The second person says, you should work with my advisor, he specializes in eye doctors just like us. Who do you think gets the referral? Who do you think gets the business? We want to work with people that feel like us. And we've seen this amazing range of niches of people working with young entrepreneurs or executives at a particular company or people in a particular municipality that have particular rules for them. There was a story recently in the press here about an advisor, literally his niche, he works with bass fishermen. People who fish for a particular kind of fish because we have competitions for it here in the U.S. with prizes as much as $500,000.
Wow.
So he specializes in people that do those tournaments. And he works with every star and celebrity there. And he loves it because he's one of the people that competes at that. Yeah, so he does it in something that's a hobby for him, but he actually built an entire business around it. So you can really do it around almost anything. And if you're a fisherman at one of those tournaments and you win a prize, who would you rather work with? A strange advisor you don't know, or the person who is an advisor and believes in the value of these tournaments? So that's who they work with, and he works with virtually every winner of the tournaments. Fantastic. So you can really do it with almost anything. It's kind of amazing, the flexibility, but people like to work with others that are like them.
Yeah.
And when you can move into a niche and create those kinds of bonds, it's something beyond just I'm an advisor and I can advise on a lot of things. Those start to create the differentiating points that build client relationships and let you really succeed as a business.
Yeah. Terrific. Just as a follow-on from that, we're finding more and more over here is it's trying to create a better picture of yourself, if you like it, and trying to have yourself maybe differentiated, maybe within a niche. It's talking about the why you do things. It's one thing to say this is what we do. Certainly over here, a lot of people say, well, we provide superannuation or we provide retirement advice. Well, there's 15,000 advisors providing superannuation and retirement advice. So there's a tendency now to talk about the why you do it and to bring out that passion to some degree of what you do and really the enjoyment you get about why you do these things. Any sort of any ideas along that side of the discussion point?
Well, a few things. Certainly I'm a huge fan of that kind of focus. There's a wonderful author in the U.S. based named Simon Sinek, and he actually has this a book as well as a video called "Start with Why" that I would highly recommend. We can make sure we get a link to share with some of the viewers for this video here. Start with why, and it's all about this theme that we can talk about the how we do and we can talk about what we do, but the why we do it is ultimately what builds connections to other people and makes us want to work with that individual in particular. Or one of the popular sayings that's been here in the U.S. advisor space for a long time, I don't know if there's a version of this in Australia, but the saying is that clients don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
And so, it doesn't matter how much you show off your expertise and what you do and how you do it and all of that knowledge and information and skills until they understand that you care about them and why you care and why you do what you do, why they should feel a connection to you and want to work with you instead of someone else. And so it's the why that really starts to form a foundation of a relationship. Because at the most basic level of trust, we trust people that have positive intent and motives. That people are doing things that we believe in what they're doing and why they're doing it. So that really becomes the foundation for the trust and everything else that comes thereafter.
Terrific. I can't agree more. I think that's certainly becoming more prevalent, and I think explaining the why, particularly with technology, the opportunity. We're seeing lots of advisors over here now explaining the what to do and more importantly the why, and giving some insights, I guess you might say, about themselves, and showing off a bit of passion through, I guess, what we're doing right now through the videos and different things they're putting on their blog posts and so on.
Well, and I'd really add to that, because we see this start to translate over into how do you market, how do you communicate, blogging and other pieces, because people want to see the why and who you are. I mean, show them. You kind of said we're starting to show them, but literally show them. So to me, video is an incredibly powerful tool for communicating the why and who you are and that you care and how you care. Having your voice show through in your website and your blogs. Again, lots of people can get up there and say very neutral, balanced comments that don't show any particular emotion.
Yeah.
We like to do that as professionals, but it's not really what other human beings connect with. Human beings connect with other human beings who have opinions about things and views. So, what I tell advisors as well here in the U.S., you don't be afraid to let your voice show through in what you believe in and what you view. Yes, you will upset some people inevitably, but you will also draw a better connection with others. If you're very careful not to offend anybody, you also won't build a relationship with anybody.
That's good message to deliver on the end of that. Fees. We're finding fees now. A large part of the FOFA changes here is that fees are becoming more front and central, if you like. You've got to be able to demonstrate. Well, you've got to show the fees, exactly what the fees are,
Closure,
and then demonstrate the value for those fees. But as a result, we're seeing more and more companies are producing products, particularly, I guess, online. Even the big banks over here and are pushing product, which and I guess the target market is around the fees. They're actually trying to hit people who are fee conscious to say, we've got a very low fee product for you as well. Is that something like that happening in the States? And if so, maybe how are the advisors managing any sort of opposition or competition, you might say, from a purely fee-driven marketing campaign?
Good question. So we do see that here in the U.S. It sort of comes in waves where we get a lot of that, and then it kind of quiets down for a while, and then we get a lot of it again. So we've been through a few cycles of that, and we have some absolutely enormous, very well-known providers in the U.S. space that have built their value proposition around being low fee and low cost. The most prominent by far being Vanguard here in the U.S. that now manages, I think, more than $2 trillion. So clearly there's a base of investors that are very interested in the low fee value proposition that they communicate. That being said, I think there are a few ways that advisors can manage to that or around that or just deal with that. The first is to recognize that the greatest fee pressures come in spaces that are commoditized. So the more similar and interchangeable things are, the less the reason there is to pay for anything but the lowest cost version. So the more that you can avoid being commoditized or doing commoditized things, the easier it is to resist the fee pressures. Now, ironically, that means when we look at that in the U.S. space, and this gets back to some of the comments earlier, doing things like being investment only, investments, particularly owning indices and basic asset allocation, is becoming very commoditized. We can do that at very low cost directly with index funds, and there's not really a lot of advisor value add. So advisors are slowly getting squeezed out of that space. They just can't charge the fees that they did before, and it's difficult for them to be viable at the lowest common fee. When we look at things that don't go through such fee pressures and don't get commoditized, it's the things that really are unique and differentiating. My in-depth financial planning services compared to anybody else, that's much harder to be fee competitive because I don't do the exact same thing as other people do. We're all a little bit different around our advisors, our skill set, our expertise, so at least becomes more difficult to compete with. The next pace beyond that is to truly get into a place where you don't compete with anyone in the first place. So my friend that specializes in financial planning for bass fishermen, his clients are not fee sensitive. There's no one to compare him to. He's the only person that does what he does. So when you go and create a niche that's so unique and specialized, a lot of the fee competitiveness begins to drop away even further because you have no competition. So again, I'm a big fan of business books. So there's another fantastic business book that came out here in the U.S. a couple of years ago that I'd recommend to your viewers as well. I think it would have a lot of crossover. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy. And the basic idea of it is most businesses compete back and forth in this war where they fight back and forth and shoot at each other and make basically make the ocean bloody red with all of the fighting that they're doing. The businesses that truly succeed and survive and thrive are the ones that don't compete with each other's head to head. They just go make something completely new that didn't exist before, and then they own that space for several years. So one of the classic examples certainly here from the U.S., and I think it's translating over there as well. So Apple has done this several times over the past several years. They made iPods when we didn't even carry portable music players. Then they made these iPhone smartphones when everybody just used them for phone calls. Then they made tablets, and they're destroying the laptop market. So as they invent those, you don't get to keep your differentiation forever. At some point, competitors come in, and you always have to keep innovating. but they exploded these in giant new marketplaces and built this absolutely extraordinarily large company, not by trying to figure out how to build a better music player or telephone or computer than their competition, but making a completely different thing that no one had ever seen before. And then you have no competition and you have no fee competitiveness. So I think that remains an opportunity for advisors as well. You're not necessarily going to go quite that extreme, but when we talk about the benefits of having niches and creating unique value propositions and finding unique ways to serve your clients, that's the point of that opportunity, because you get away from competitive fee environments when you do something that's different than anybody else. There's no one to compare you to.
No, that's terrific advice, and I'm sure the advisors will be ready and willing to take on that advice and be looking for new opportunities and trying to invent them. I think just on that, a lot of people say one of my favorite quotes is that one of the first things you do is ask your clients what it is you need to deliver on your prospects. And I think it was Henry Ford that once said that he didn't do that. Had he gone to ask us, what did people want, they would have said faster horses. So he
Right.
building a faster horse, couldn't do that, so he built a car, and the rest is history. So I think probably this is something they need to do themselves as an advisor and as within the business, is really try and think, okay, what service can I offer, which probably doesn't exist at the moment, or if it does, it's something we can develop and push ahead of the competition.
And what focus group can you do that service for? I think that's the other challenge that we see a lot of advisors have. We're often not entirely happy with our growth and how things are going, and so we tend to get stuck in this mindset that says, if I'm not getting as much growth as I want, I need to open up wider so I can work with more people, so I can try to get more in to replace the growth. But the wider that I get, the less unique I am, and the fewer new clients I actually get, which then makes me more desperate. So I open up even wider and become even less unique, and then I get even fewer new clients because I'm even less differentiated. And we see advisors that get stuck in this trap. Yeah. Where the true opportunities go in the other direction. What focus group can we work with that's so narrow that nobody else serves them, that we can do something unique for that they haven't seen anywhere else? Because then we have no competition, we have no fee pressures, and we can just own that space and be incredibly successful in that space. And that to me is the opportunity that we just sometimes get stuck in this track of making things wider and wider, when really a lot of the best successes come from getting narrower and narrower.
Yeah. We'll just sort of change tact a little bit now, Michael. We'll talk about if you look at some of the offices, you obviously see a lot of advisors, a lot of different advisor firms, and what are they doing right now? I guess not so much on the value proposition, but making sure they can deliver on that value proposition in the way they've got their processes and their systems right. So that you're finding a bit of a trend to using technology in different ways, or a certain technology, or just maybe a format that they've come up with. What's kind of happening there to make sure they can deliver and make it efficient at the same time?
Yeah, so I think we're seeing this at two levels. One is just a focus in general on how we can be more efficient. The more efficient we are, the less costs we have on our businesses, the more profits we derive, or the more clients we can work with. So just the positives of leveraging technology in general. And certainly we're seeing a lot more use of that, everything from just getting better technology to manage the workflows in our practice, using technology to communicate better with clients, so things like video chats and email and online vaults and other ways to get information out there to clients, so we don't have to have as many meetings or drive to as many meetings or things like that, to save time and energy. The firms I think that are really doing unique things beyond that go a step further to figure out exactly what it is that their clients want and need, and try to deliver that to them, or understand what's unique about its particular target client base and do something accordingly. So we see a fascinating firm here in the U.S. called LearnVest that's trying to work with young women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, a demographic that traditionally we've said you can't even do financial planning for, because they don't have enough wealth to be able to afford it, except for a small number that have actually created a lot of affluence. And they're trying to figure out how to serve that marketplace. And so they're doing it with a very technology-focused environment, they're using a lot of video chat, they're using a lot of telephone, they're using a lot of email. And it's not just because it's efficient, it's because they're working with young people who are busy professionals or busy parents. They don't have the time to come and deal with all of this anyways. They wouldn't know what to do with it. We see another firm here in the U.S. called Oxygen Financial. They specialize in working with a lot of younger folks in their 30s and 40s. They realize one of the challenges for a lot of their young clients is that the clients have young children, and figuring out just if I want to go to my planner, it costs me extra money because I have to send my kids to daycare or get a babysitter to figure out how to handle it. So they solve that problem. You bring your kids in with you. They have video game systems in the front lobby. So the kids can play the video games for an hour while the parents go and do a meeting. If your practice worked with people who are retiring, you probably wouldn't have Xbox video game systems in your front lobby. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense if you're working with 65-year-old clients. But when you're working with 40-year-old clients who have 10-year-old children, that's a very unique, high-value service offering. And they're thrilled. Their clients will come in and see them because they've solved the problem around how to service a client with young children. Bring the children in. We'll keep them entertained. So, it's those kinds of things where you really drill down to who is your particular target clientele and what is unique about them so that you can solve their unique problems. That's the problem with trying to be everything to everyone. I don't know how to make those service offerings when we work with everybody from age 20 to 85. Yeah. You can't make your service offering unique because you do too much of everything for everyone.
Yeah, that's a good point you raise again, and it comes down to that niche again. And certainly one thing I've been talking to advisors about is that we need to think differently about our processes. And a lot of advisors have built their businesses on the back of relationships, which is a face-to-face meeting, and that's great. And I kind of say, well, we've got to be careful there too. Sometimes we insist upon that meeting, no matter how inconvenient it may be for the client. Whereas if we can make it easier for the client.
I think that's the part that we forget. The joke I always make when I do some speeches around this to advisors. How many advisors out there have children? So most of them do. They have telephones. Yeah. They like to text message. I think that the statistic here in the U.S. now, the average teenager sends 3,300 text messages every month to their friends. Do you think they have a strong relationship with their friends? Yeah, I mean, absolutely they would say yes. They have such strong friendships and relationships using virtual communications that in the U.S. now we have to deal with a phenomenon we call cyberbullying. Yeah, we've got the same problem over here. People having feelings hurt to the point that they've literally committed suicide because of the relationships they have online and having their feelings hurt. So in a world where people will commit suicide because of the virtual relationships, the idea that I can't build a relationship with my clients in a virtual realm to me is just kind of absurd. It's only a limitation because we make it a limitation. The reality is absolutely you can build relationships in this end. Relationships are built around communication and being connected. Frankly, opportunities like this, video and face-to-face, I think is very powerful for building relationships. It's definitely easier to do it where you can see the person than when you're just talking on the phone and you're trying to hear what they're saying and you're trying to make out whether they sound upset or not. Now we can see each other. So I think video will help a lot of the breakthrough in recognizing that you can absolutely build relationships virtually and at a distance. And I've certainly lived through this myself. The first book I wrote was on annuities, which is our U.S. version of superannuation products. Here, I wrote my first book on annuities, and 4 years after we published the book, I met my co-author for the first time in person. So we built a relationship through message boards and online communication for years, to the point where we decided to write a book together, which we collaborated on entirely by telephone and email. We published a first and second edition, and then the only reason we ever met in person is we were both invited to speak at the same conference about the book, so we got to meet. And there are just these incredible opportunities now to build communication and relationships online in a virtual world. And certainly, I think he and I have a better connection now that we met in person. But it certainly wasn't a requirement for building a relationship.
And that's a great story. It's been great chatting, Michael. And we'll just in closing, we've covered off a fair bit here. But any sort of final remarks? Anything you would like to just one last sentence or two you want us to all remember this conversation by?
I think if there's one takeaway to make the point from all this. It's just how people remember that trying to be everything to everyone is not unique. You know, if you try to be everything to everyone, you're nothing special to anyone. Yeah. And I think that's a trap we tend to get caught in as advisors, and really in across a lot of businesses. That just remember, the more specialized you are, and the more you can build that personal connection to someone, because you say, I'm the only advisor who works with people like you that have your problems, and I have the solutions. You know, that's the kind of unique value that ultimately builds businesses that does equally well in environments like FOFA and the kinds of transitions that you're dealing with. You know, that's the epitome of a business that's about relationships, and that's really the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's been terrific having this conversation, and we'll look forward to having a chat again soon.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, and good evening over there in Washington.
Thank you.